Before we meet our guests, let's take a look at this clip. Here we go. Wow. I am so thrilled to bring into this Zoom webinar Joyce DiDonato and Kenyatta Hughes. Friends, you are being promoted to panelists. There they are. There are those faces. Joyce, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, hi. Hi, Susan. Hi, Kenyatta.
Kenyatta, it's so nice to see you, Joyce. It's a joy to see your face.
Thank you.
If you don't know already, our audience today is made up of educators and music lovers and opera supporters, and we're all so super excited to get to have this time with you. You should know that everyone that we're speaking to today is answering a series of questions. Who are you? How are you really? What challenges have you encountered during this time? What possibilities have you surfaced? We're going to get to that in just a moment. But first, we want to get that's one way of looking at it. My glasses almost got knocked off my head. So we know who you are. You are Joyce DiDonato. You are Kenyatta Hughes. Let's start with this. How are each of you, but really? How are you really? Kenyatta, how are you really?
I'm. It's interesting. I've been here during the course of the afternoon, and I've heard so many people talking about how where they are and how they are right now is kind of different by the time they answer the question. I'd have to say that's pretty true of me too. I think that I felt pretty determined. I've been feeling kind of determined over the past few weeks. But there was just a more fighting against a determination to prevent a certain thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Sort of mindset, I think that was inherent in it. Whereas now I still feel determined, but somehow it feels more hopeful, just as many of the educators have talked about, just the inspiration that the children are. Frankly, David Bowman, when he spoke of one of his students with writing this piece inspired by a song that was within this novel series.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm feeling determined, but in a much more positive way, frankly.
I love that, Kenyatta. And I will tell you, I believe, again, I'm repeating myself, there's something about when people engage in creativity. It's not always easy when there are so many challenges, but I see over and over and over again when people engage with their own creativity, and sometimes when they do it in community with others, how their feelings change and the way that they experience a time changes. I love that. Joyce DiDonato, how are you doing really?
Oh, well, how much time do we have? First of all, David Bowman, I'm just seeing your thing, 100% sophomore boys. Okay, that freaks me out, and that's awesome, and I love it. I want to say big, big hello to everybody. I've not been able to follow everything because I've been in an 8-hour drive coming into rural France from rural Spain, and I'm crossing my fingers on a thread and a prayer that the internet holds up, because I have no phone signal here or anything, but so far so good.
So far, so
if
good.
I cut out, I'll try and reconnect as soon as I can.
Sounds good.
In a nutshell, I mean, I'm on, probably like all of you guys, on a huge roller coaster.
Yeah.
We're seeing devastation and decimation in a lot of industries and lives. And I finally was able to identify what was happening to me in this period, which is real grief. In a lot of areas,
Yep.
Grief for the world, grief for loss, personal loss of people I've lost, the grief of loss of a way of life, fear of what the new normal is going to be like. And on the other hand, I've had sort of the whiplash going to the other extreme of a kind of unexpected bliss in some ways, because I've decided just to listen to what I think the directive from Mother Nature has been, which is shut up, be quiet, go inside, stop, just stop. Not only to me personally, but I think to the world. And I've tried to embrace that element instead of fighting what this moment is. I've tried to sort of embrace it. And sometimes I'm successful. And other times I just allow myself to go into that place of grief.
Yeah.
And there's no handbook for what we're all living at this moment. So I'm trying to also give myself permission to be where I need to be in the middle of it.
Amen. And I do think there is something to, just repeating myself again, but something about coming into just being present to whatever is occurring. So being in the now, here, this, past is gone, the future's not here yet. And just being, if you're grieving in this moment, to be present to that grieving. If you are resting, if you are creative, if you are determined, if you are hopeful, just being present to it. But even that can be a challenge to bring yourself into the present when the present is so jam-packed with a lot of challenge. But yeah. let me repeat myself again and say how excited we are to have you here today. You both started out near Kansas City, Missouri. Is that true? Is that right?
Sure. Yeah.
I love that. You have ended up in this. Now we are in this now here, this moment. You are in this moment in collaboration with each other. You are here on this Zoom call with us, but you took very different paths to get to this moment. Could each of you speak a bit about what path brought you here to this moment? And why don't we start with you, Joyce?
Okay, how much time do we have?
Usually I do this. I play a game called 60-Second Life Story, but I was like, do you want to do 60-Second Life Story?
I'll do my best. Well, I mean, you can Google it.
I'm putting 60 seconds on the clock.
Okay.
And you can tell us your life story. Don't leave out the awesome parts starting now. Go for it.
So I grew up in Prairie Village, Kansas, 6 of 7 children in a super Catholic family. I was on the track to be a choral teacher, high school choral teacher. I wanted to be the cool one. Could have also done drama, but the music kept pulling me in. And I studied at Wichita State University, got my music ed degree, did a semester of student teaching in really rough schools. Morning was North High School at Wichita, and afternoon was, I forget the name of the elementary school, but I saw a lot of pain and difficulty and challenge, and I gained so much respect for teachers. And I said at the end of that semester, I don't think I meant to do this because I don't feel called to teaching so much because the stage feels like where I'm meant to be. My dad told me, Joyce, there's more than one way to educate people. There's more than one way to reach people. So you can go and do whatever you want and just always keep that as a purpose. So I kept that idea of service and education as a vocation throughout this crazy opera world, which you guys know all about that. And so it also brought me into a type of educational role and vocational role going into Sing Sing Prison, which is where I met Kenyatta. And then when Peter Gelb called and asked for me to do the concert at the Met, I asked him to write a piece for the concert.
All right. I got to tell you, that was a little more than 60 seconds, but not much. And that was very masterfully done. Kenyatta, now you get to choose, Kenyatta. You can choose the 60-second path, or you can just take a more leisurely route. I leave it to you.
I'll take door number 1. Yes. 60 seconds.
I love how game you are. Ready? Go.
I was raised in Kansas City, Missouri. Grew up in a home. Well, I'll just say that the first time I ran away from home, I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Through group homes, juvenile detention, different things coming up to eventually graduating, if you will, to prison, living a particular type of life. Convicted for robbery, actually took another person's life. It was and wrestling with my own self and whether or not I had any value. Once I came to terms with the things that I had done, found some value in music, found a way to express myself, and became part of a program at Carnegie. Carnegie Hall was bringing in called Musical Connections, which is where I met Joyce. She came in and we had the opportunity to write for her. So I've composed for her. This was actually the 3rd time that I've composed specifically with her in mind, and the things that were created were just so incredible. As soon as she offered the opportunity, I leapt at it, and since then have become, a competent songwriter and musician with a wonderful network of friends and musicians who have been incredibly supportive. So,
Again, just a little over 60 seconds. That, friends, that is how you do a 60-second life story. Really, really beautifully done. Will you speak more about, you both just referenced this, but this origin story of the collaboration between the two of you as human beings, but also the collaboration that led to the piece, specifically the piece that we just saw. Will you speak a little bit more to that?
Maybe I'll just jump in a little bit. I first went to Sing Sing about 4.5-5 years ago, and was able to perform and to learn and perform 2 of these pieces that Kenyatta speaks about. One of them was a duet, which we performed together. You can see that I think it's up on YouTube in the Carnegie website. Yeah. And I mean, that whole experience is something quite incredible. And you can imagine, me and my background walking into Sing Sing for the first time. And I can't say I had no fear about it, but I was absolutely very much aware that I was not in my environment. It was a world that I didn't understand, didn't really know the rules. And so I had not apprehension, but I was just not going into, it wasn't my first day of rehearsal in a theater where I knew the ropes, so
it wasn't the familiar. Yeah.
Exactly. But within just a very short amount of time, it was clear the way the Carnegie had set up this program is that this was a classroom, and this was more than that. It was a consortium of colleagues, of musicians, and everybody was there to work on music. And so immediately I became a fellow musician, and it wasn't an outsider coming into this strange environment. And that's how we worked and continue to work as I go back there. And Kenyatta made such a huge impression on me because he was very clearly a leader in that group, with an incredible talent for writing music and performing it. I mean, Kenyatta, when you stand up on stage and you speak to the guys there and you sing your music, you are so charismatic and born communicator. It's really powerful to be an audience member for what you're doing. And just quickly going into this concert that with the Met, I had a lot I wanted to accomplish with the concert. And mainly it was to try and really meet the listener and the viewer where we are today in 2020. It was obvious to me that I couldn't do the same recital that I would have done a year earlier.
Yeah.
And with everything happening in America, particularly around this hot-blooded topic of race and racism and social injustice, all of these things that we're immersed in, I wanted to try and go into that topic, but I didn't really know the best way. I'm from white middle-class America. And so I wanted to do something authentic and real and meaningful, but also appropriate. And I started looking at the poetry of Langston Hughes, who Kenyatta reminded me is also from Missouri. And I found a poem called I Dream a World. And it spoke to me really strongly. And I said, I want somebody to set this to music for the concert. And the only name that came to me was Kenyatta. And so I reached out to him about 3.5 weeks before the concert. And I called, I said, Kenyatta,
Really?
this is a little crazy.
That is some quick turnaround, Joyce.
I said, no pressure either way, but I want to toss you this idea and see if it resonates. And Kenyatta, you can take it from there.
I said, yeah, before she hadn't even necessarily defined it clearly. And I was like, yep, I want that. Absolutely. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Just as I said, just in working with her, just the things that have come. And interestingly enough, the piece that I think connected, the piece that I'd written before that connected us so strongly, it was called A Place for Us, and the chorus that kept being repeated was this idea of a place for us, just beyond sight if we hold tight to our vision. So there's always, interestingly, I hadn't thought about it at the time. I've really only been thinking about it the past few days, that it seems as though whenever I've had the opportunity to work with Joyce, there has been this, in the music, there's this hopeful sort of recognition of things not being great now and potentially being better in the future, and us moving towards it. And I hadn't thought of that necessarily. I don't think that I'd ever intentionally done that. It's just what seemed to come out. I think I can appreciate what, when Joyce speaks of moving into a space that was not familiar. But one of the things, I've said before, one of the things that I really, really appreciated is that immediately when she came in to work with me and the other men who were in that program, she interacted as a musician, as a colleague. She took our composing skills and our musical skills, because some of them were musicians, some were composers, some were at the point where they were simply learning different things. I mean, the range of skill levels was all the way from individuals who were learning durations of notes to individuals who were almost ready to really tackle serious, significant compositions. In fact, I've mentioned, Joe Wilson, who just from the first time that he heard as we were preparing for Joyce, the educators, the teaching artists brought in several recordings, and from literally the first aria that he heard her sing, he was like, "Oh, this is someone who had not heard opera before." He was like, "Yeah, this is me. This is what." It resonated with him so seriously that he's working now on his second complete opera. So
wow.
The point.
Yeah. Sorry, can I the first time I went in, I brought opera and I met the guys and stuff. And it was maybe 8 or 9 months later, I came back from my second round. And Joseph, who was quite quiet the first time I met him, and I would say I've told him this, so I'm not talking out of school. He was the one guy that intimidated me a little bit when I first met him, because he was quite internal and imposing in a way. And when I came back the second time, he was the first guy in the room, and he said, "I want to thank you for coming last time, because I didn't know I didn't know what this world of opera was at all. And now I know I need to write one." So all you teachers out there, please, thank you for all the work you're doing, but never underestimate or never expect that your students are going to have a certain kind of reaction to a certain kind of music, because you never know. Yeah. And he's on his second one, Kenyatta. I didn't know that. Of course he is.
I have to say, if I'm Joe and I'm hearing Joyce float those notes like she just did in that piece, I'd be inspired to write opera as well. Yeah, for sure.
The way that I've said this before, but I have to say it again because she did it so beautifully. The way that she rendered that song, so I'm happy right now thinking about it. It is. So when she presented that, when she said she had a poem, she had a Langston Hughes poem that she wanted to set to music, and I just figured it was going to be a Raisin in the Sun. I figured, we were going to approach it from this whole dream deferred type of thing, or maybe, the Crystal Stair and, life. And so I'm you're thinking very quickly and in those split seconds. But when she said, "I dream a world," first of all, I wasn't even I remembered it, but not distinctly. I had to go back and get it. And then I thought it was so perfect because Langston Hughes never presents the idea of a dream without an acknowledgement of the present. So it's not as though I dream a world where everything is great. Every single time it's a recognition, like where he says, he doesn't say, "I dream a world where we treat each other better." He says, "I dream a world where no other man will scorn." There's a very clear recognition that we don't treat each other well.
Yeah.
So as we moved into that, near the end of the composition, Jacob Blake was shot, and I had this arc that I had intended that resolved in a very hopeful way. And it was literally the day I found out.
Your feelings changed.
Oh my goodness. It was difficult. Oh my goodness. It was so, and I called Joyce and I was like, I'm really struggling right now.
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of difficulty with resolving this in a space that actually hopes for that dream to come to a reality. And she was she was a good friend in that moment, not just a good colleague or a co-musician. And we just talked honestly, and about it, and this is a rough thing, man. There's a lot of rough going on here, but as many of the educators have talked about in the chat, I think that whether it's the Met attempting to come to grips, as Peter Gubb was saying, like recognizing, look, it's unfortunate that we're still talking about first in this time, but it's time to start.
And here we are.
It's time to start having some first. So if this is where we are and how we got here, that is what can leave me with hope of the dream, as Joyce changed that little. There's a little word there that she changed that made it so perfect.
I'm so struck while you're talking about how the two of you as creative collaborators, and then bringing in Langston Hughes as a creative collaborator, and then the musicians that you worked with in the musicians that in that beautifully filmed concert that you gave during a pandemic, and the musicians and the way that it's lit. So the filmmakers, all of it, the way that comes together and becomes this beautiful treasure, this beautiful offering that comes out of such a challenging time. To me, there's so much possibility in that. I'm so moved by it, but I want each of you to speak on what you've said. You've mentioned some, but what challenges you have been experiencing specifically, and what possibilities have risen up out of it for you during this time. Joyce, how about you?
I think keeping the hope alive is a fundamental challenge.
Yeah.
Because there's so much uncertainty in so many areas right now. And I'm somebody I've always called myself a belligerent optimist. So I really dig in to stay optimistic. And it's actually, Kenyatta, your description of getting to the end of the piece and hitting this just devastating moment with Jacob's death, his murder. I love that you finished the piece when I'm sure it was really daunting to finish this thing that talks about hope when you likely weren't feeling it at all in that moment. But you were true to what you were feeling. So instead of ending as you were originally thinking with something really major and you stayed true to the moment.
Yeah.
And it becomes that much more real. And what I think every great composition is, which is a real fingerprint for this moment in time.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason this piece is so strong and touches people deeply. I'm working on that idea of hope. I'm working very much on the idea of not concentrating on what we're missing, but concentrating on what we do have. This collaboration, I think, will end up being one of the great things for me that has come out of this pandemic, because it's an example of so many things I believe in. And we have a new great song in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's worthwhile. I think that's something really exciting. I do want to say, I know, Kenyatta, I speak for you, I think as well too, that another big collaborator on this was Craig Terry, who did some of the arrangement of Kenyatta's composition. He runs the Ryan Opera Center in Chicago, and he was just a mensch through this as well. I think one of my biggest challenges has been trying to figure out the best way to contribute in this moment. And one of the things I've done is I've taken the part luxury, but also part necessity of taking time for myself, which I kind of never really got in the last,
I bet,
20 years of my career, of working sort of 11 months out of the year and just playing catch up the rest of the time. And grateful for those 20 years. But I realize now that, getting off the hamster wheel, that I just had never really taken time for myself. And I'm trusting the process of that is going to bear fruit a lot creatively as I go forward. And so I've gone quiet, much more quiet than I usually am on social media and these things, because there's so much noise and there's so much contribution happening right now online that I figured nobody's going to miss one voice for a little bit. But when I do come back, or if I do contribute something, I want it to be really rooted in something deeply important or deeply effective, if I can.
I love those possibilities. I love that. Kenyatta, talk to us a little bit about challenges experienced and possibilities that have risen up.
Well, I think even as I was mentioning the nearing the end of that composition and
Yeah.
Blake being shot, and just almost daily, just seeing and on one hand, sometimes I'm like, I'm just not going to turn the television on. I'm just not going to do it. I rarely manage to keep that particular commitment because there's so much happening. I feel there's a certain obligation to see. But one of the things that came of the discussion that Joyce and I had when I was having that particular difficulty was a recognition that while much of the things that are happening, especially in the United States right now, feels like it is out of nowhere for a significant amount of the population, that's not necessarily true. So
Correct.
there are, I mean, I can speak and just say that Black folks in the United States have been saying that as far as police brutality or systemic racism within these different structures, we've been saying, hey, this is happening. And there are entire segments of the population that, because it was not readily apparent or because it was convenient, just either didn't acknowledge it or just didn't believe it. So for these things to come out is kind of necessary. And when I can have that perspective, I find that as sort of incongruous as it might seem, this is actually something of a hopeful moment, because when there's a sort of boil or infection, be lanced and drained, that one can become, if not comfortable, then certainly used to a particular sort of pain if it increases over time and becomes chronic. And we just live our lives and don't even necessarily notice it. But when it comes to the point of saying, hey, we got to deal with this thing, often the moment of treating it, the moment that where it has to be dealt with, that point of pain is much more intense and much more acute, as because that's what's going to lead to the treatment. And I've become, it's an interesting sort of inverse. I've become more and more hopeful as the circumstances and the situations around me seem to become more and more dire, because what I see is a sort of a system that has been in place for so long that the only way that it could sort of be that it could be straightened out, the only way that this could be addressed is in such a almost cosmic way that we see it. And I think that art, this is for me now, I have many friends who are activists, and they'll be out there out in the street, they're marching. I have friends who are legislators and lobbyists and who are working in civil and social justice in that way. And I am I'm a huge fan of theirs. They tell me that they're my fans. I'm a fan of theirs. But for me, I found that the way that I can impact that, the way that I can contribute to that, is to remind us of our connection, to remind us of our common humanity, to remind us on a much more fundamental level that's not necessarily about changing a law. It's about changing a mind and changing a heart. And I can appreciate that doesn't seem practical to some people, but I think it's similar to what educators are doing. They're recognizing, especially educators of young children, they're recognizing that there's an old saying, I wish I knew to whom to credit it, that the boy is the father of the man, or the child is the father of the adult. And that's to say that this is the time that, in very, very small ways, my philosophies, whether I realized it in whichever erroneous path I might have taken to come to the place where I am, many of my philosophies were formed by, Piers Anthony and Isaac Asimov and Heinlein, and these things that I was reading as a child and learning ideas of right and wrong in those contexts and about how we interact with one another, stories that I was able to hear or listening to. We were talking about my favorite song when I was a child, Swinging on the Star. But there was just these ideas that were laying a groundwork and laying a foundation for who and what I would be later. And so I think that now I am charged in that same way to speak to people on that basic fundamental level that really, I don't think there is any other tool that can bypass all of these constructs that we've created that prevent us from engaging as human beings. Art is literally I can't think of anything else that is able to do that, especially music, sometimes poetry. And
Yep.
it can just get right through all of those things, and the essence of me speak to the essence of you. And that
Yes. I couldn't agree more. And to your point, I do think I'm going to misquote this, but that sentiment that every movement, every needs their artists, their songwriters, their poets, these people that provide sort of a clarity of vision and can communicate it in a way that goes from your hearts, from Joyce's heart, from Kenyatta's heart, straight into my heart. And with the exception of like scents and smells, which can, transport you through time and space, music, I mean, there's nothing that cuts through to my thinking as quickly as the combination of music and storytelling. And so I know, I hear what you're saying. I'm an artist, so I guess I'm biased. I hear what you're saying about we're not lawmakers, we're not legislatures, we're not rocking legislature, but and maybe we're not even out in the streets. But as educators and as artists, I do think that I think the work that you're doing and the work that these teachers are doing is so important. So and so moving. So I'm happy you're doing it. I'm so curious, and I'm so happy that I get a chance to ask you both this question. I'm mildly obsessed with the work of a scholar named Meta Wagner. She's done a lot of research around creative types. We all contain a blend of the following, but I'm curious, which would best describe each of your creative drivers? So I'm going to read you 5 short descriptions and see which one feels closest to you. You live to make an audience laugh or cry, and you love applause and adoration. That's number 1. Number 2, you become so immersed in your creative work, you lose all track of time and space. Number 3, you thrive on breaking boundaries and crashing conventions. Number 4, you need to express yourself and you hope your art will help others. And number 5, you have a fiery desire to right wrongs and change the world with your art. As I read those descriptions to you, and usually we're a combo platter, but was there one that really jumped out? I have my guesses, but Joyce, did one of those really jump out at you?
All first 4, I was like, yeah, part of it. Yeah, part of it. And then you said number 5. I was like, oh, well, that's that.
That was my guess. Joyce DiDonato, you are the activist. You are the activist. And I've seen this in the work that you've made with Kenyatta, and I've seen it in your prior work. You're not simply an interpretive artist when it comes to opera. You are putting your activism into your art as an originator, as a maker. So I nailed that one. Kenyatta, how about you?
Actually, as soon as you said you live to make an audience laugh or cry, that's literally all that mattered. There is nothing to
interesting
than seeing an audience, have a reaction that is resonant with there's nothing that is more fulfilling to me than the idea that existed within me now exist within you as well. And when that is evidenced by actual tears, or I mean, I can't, yeah.
Kenyatta, we would call you an A-lister. You are an A-lister. But I'll tell you what my guess was. As I listened to your work, as I read about you and listen to interviews with you, and I listen to your work, I would have pegged you as a sensitive soul, that your need to express yourself, your hope that your art will change and help others, and the way that you almost understand and order your life experiences and wrap your arms around your life experience, read to me like a sensitive soul. But it turns out you might be an A-lister.
Well,
Maybe you're a little bit of both.
yeah, I think that life, everyone's life, but I'll speak for mine specifically, and this is something that Joyce and I have talked about. I didn't have a way to. So for me, as far as needing to express, this was a language. I was not articulate, if you will. Not, but so long ago, art was a language that allowed me to articulate things that I literally found ineffable in other ways. So I guess maybe that's just so inherent that I don't really think of that as it's not a thing. That's just life. That's just normal.
It's in your bones.
Can I say one thing quickly about that to all the educators watching? Is I can't even begin to imagine the stress and the workload, and words earlier on the thing you put up, downtrodden and all of this. And I you are heroes in all capital letters. The work you are doing, you probably can't feel the repercussions of it and the investment that you're making. And I know it's costing you all at a deep personal level. It's costing your energy. It's costing your creative potential, because you all were born for classrooms. And I can only begin to imagine the difficulty. But what Kenyatta is talking about here, you are still giving your students the tools to express the unexpressible, the things that they don't know how to do it, the things they don't comprehend themselves in any kind of conscious level. And those tools that you're giving them, I beg you not to doubt the investment that you're making at a human level. I beg you not to doubt the effort, that it is worth it. I wish you had more support. I wish you had more support at every level, but you're out there on the front line of this, and it is essential. It is viable. It is vital. And I'm here to cheer you guys on and to let you know that you're giving us life at a soul level and a heart level. And I applaud you so strongly, and I admire you more than I can say. And that's one of my reasons for being here today, is I just want to cheer you guys on, because the work you're doing is heroic.
Thank you, Joyce. I want to ask both of you, what are each of you doing to take care of yourself now? Kenyatta, any ideas? What are you doing to take care of yourself right now?
You know what? Interestingly enough, I'm just giving myself a little bit of slack.
Yes.
I'm serious.
I am too. Yes.
That I wrestled with, especially at the beginning, was I felt like especially many of the friends that I have, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I need to be out there, wherever, doing whatever. I got to go tear it down brick by brick. I got to build it up, and sometimes I just got to say, you know what, I'm doing what I can with what I have, and that's enough, So
yeah, I love it. A little bit of slack for all of us. I love it. And Joyce, what are you doing to take care of yourself now?
I think I love how you expressed that, Kenyatta. I think I'm doing that as well. I have a nature tear it down to build it up. I've carried the weight of saving the world on my shoulders a lot. Of course, that's not my job, but my corner of it, I try to take care of. I think it's similar. It's giving myself permission. I think the biggest thing I'm doing to take care of myself is to honor this sense of silence that I feel called not watching different kinds of silence, not watching the news 24/7, getting off social media 24/7, and not listening to myself all the time. Silence, I think, has been one of the biggest gifts ways that I'm taking care of myself. I have a little piano student out here outside the door, probably waiting to see if I'm coming to dinner. You want to say hi, Gaiton?
Oh, we're eating.
Okay, dinner's on. Okay, I'll be
All
down.
right, dinner's on. Thank you so much. Go have dinner. Kenyatta, maybe you'll go have a snack. We are so thankful for the time that you've spent with us today, providing us with some inspiration and some uplift. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
We love you guys. Kenyatta, I adore you.
It's good to see you, Joyce. It's good to see you. Thank you so much. Hey, you know what? I've been doing this all afternoon. It feels so good. Whoosh.
Whoosh. Yes. My gosh, I got whooshed by Joyce and Kenyatta this day. It's hard for this day to get any better. All right. Bye, friends.
Take care.
Can we also just talk about how inspiring they both are and how cute Joyce's glasses are? I mean, come on. I always marvel when I'm working with the Met how grateful I am for the possibility to be in fellowship and be in dialogue with such amazing artists and such amazing educators. And I've made a commitment to myself during this time that when I feel something about someone or a group of people, I tell them. So I just want to tell you all right now, because I'm feeling it. I really, really appreciate you.